Okay, so we fitted a couple of these new version PTZs outside. So Hikvision have largely overhauled their PTZ range. So we're going to take a look at specifically the 8 megapixel model that you have in front of you, presented to you by the spec sheet. There's also a 4 megapixel version, and there is also a 12 megapixel version. So 8 megapixel 4K Darkfighter. It's not the Darkfighter X, although it has adopted that platinum and black color scheme. So they're very modern looking, new functionality, new hardware, updated zoom ratios, and it has a lot more VCA functions, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to look at this today with you guys, to show you some of the functions and cool things that we can now perform via this PTZ. So you can see there we have the 8 megapixel, and we have the 4 megapixel version, and there's two versions in the 4 megapixel that we do sell at DVS, so please do contact us and we can run through the best option for you. Whereas a lot of the PTZs were 36 or 32 times zoom, they've now been upgraded to the 42 times zoom, as you can see here. They're still powered by PoE. They are 60 watt PoE, so you need the PoE, high PoE injectors or switch that supports the 60 watt PoE, or you can power them with the AC voltage if you still require that setup. We do also carry the matching brackets, and they do go nicely on the WEC and Ultron swan necks. So if you've got the galvanized swan neck, this color scheme goes really nice with that, because it's that platinum with a galvanized look, so it doesn't look out of place at all like a white one may possibly do. But that's just aesthetics. So you can see on the spec sheets, lots of functionalities on there. It's got the updated smart tracking algorithm, so smart tracking 3.0. So we'll take a look at the smart tracking, how I would set that up to get the best out of it, and how you guys can deploy it. It's got enhanced VCA functionality. It's also got the which we're going to look at, the ANPR functionality. So the ANPR functionality, I would say you're always going to look at using an ANPR camera statically if possible, but this does give another option, at least if you can't get a camera to be zoomed in on the area that you require. So we'll take a look around that also. So you can see there, if you want the specs, I can send them. You can download them from Hikvision's website, or you can simply go to our website where you'll be able to find and download them when you require. So we support face capture, face comparison, vehicle detection, so it's vehicle license plate model, basic events. We've got motion, video tampering, alarm inputs and outputs. Smart event is unattended baggage, object removal, intrusion detection, line crossing, region entrance, region exit, vandal proof alarm, audio exception. That requires an external microphone to be connected to the audio input. ANR and dual VCA. ANR is automatic network replenishment or refresh. Basically, if you have an SD card in the camera, enable this function on the NVR. If the camera goes offline for some reason, like your network connection goes down between the device, the footage that's stored on the SD card will be backloaded back to the NVR, so you don't have a loss of footage on the NVR. Really powerful function. You just need a back-end device that's compatible. Most of our back-end devices do support this function with an SD card in the camera. So another nice little handy function that you can use. 7 alarm inputs, 2 alarm outputs, 1 audio input, 1 audio output, RS485, 500 meters of infrared. It's got the smart IR. So by smart IR we mean if an object comes close to the PTZ, the infrared will compensate for it, so you don't overexpose the image effectively. If you use the model with a wiper, we promote the wiper model. Then you have the auto wiper control. We've had that for a couple of years now, but it is a really handy function. You just enable it in the web control, which I'll show you shortly. And some of the Dory information there with some of the specs and the adapters and the compatible brackets. So nice and simple. And again, the 4 megapixel is very similar. You can scroll through that at your heart's content, or just download it and take a closer look. So firstly, if we look at the PTZ, so we've got one fitted on an 8-meter Ultron column in our compound. So if I show you the image, this is the 8 megapixel 42 times zoom model. So it's zoomed in on the entrance to our industrial estate, or when I say ours, just a generic industrial estate. It's fitted, this is the 8 megapixel version, as I said. If I zoom out using Internet Explorer, it does take a little bit of time. You can see that's the entrance to the industrial estate where we're housed, and we're actually using this for number plate recognition. So you can see lovely clear image, an 8 megapixel H.265 when I let go of the PTZ control, that will now zoom back into that junction. The reason that is doing that is because we have set the ANPR functionality up on this product, which is one of the functionalities which we're going to run through. It'll sort itself out on the focus. You can see there's a column in the way there, so it doesn't know whether to focus on that or that. But there is a way to use rapid focus in this product. Different people have different terminologies, but we use rapid focus as a setup, which allows us to then already be focused when it gets when the PTZ is moving and traveling to a scene. It will allow us to already be focused into that area, and you can see I can adjust the focus to be far instead of near. Oh, too much. You get the idea. So there we go. Right, I'm going to stop that and we're going to go into the configuration. So firstly, it's important to note that these new functionalities are only supported on this new model range, the 2DF8C range, not on the older 2DF model range that you would previously have used. Is the 8C, so it's an improved hardware and functionality. This is currently the latest firmware version, but again, always check what your latest firmware version is before you deploy, or when you deploy your product, so you get the, any sort of issues that have been found and ironed out. Not that there's many, of course, but obviously function improvements as well. What you will see is the VCA resource tab has appeared. So if I go to VCA resource, I can select one of these default VCA resource functionalities. Face capture, smart event. So smart event is your line cross, object removal, intrusion areas, etc., which is kind of the default setup. Road traffic, which is ANPR functionality. Now, if you put the road traffic functionality on, you will lose the functionality for the smart event. So some of these modes will limit what you can do with this PTZ. So if you're using a road traffic setup, which we're going to show you first, then you do lose the smart functionality of line cross intrusion, smart tracking, etc. Smart event, you'll have that back. Face capture, you'll have a different set. And then you've got person arming and vehicle arming. Now, if you go to help, we do have a built-in manual, and it will tell you what these menu options are. So you can go through there and actually look at that yourself. But it will say in the VCA resource, when you select the resource that's applicable to your site, the unit will reboot, and VCA options are mutually exclusive. Some functions may not be supported by that model. So if you want to refer to anything, click on help, and a lot of the functionality is explained in the manual. So we're going to leave it on road traffic first. So I don't have to reboot it, but then we will reboot it in a different mode shortly. Standard functionality past this, so we've got the reboot, upgrade firmware, etc. Select diagnosis information. So if I want to export certain information, I can do the status, running logs, working platform status, starting logs. So when you export these diagnosis logs, R&D, we can send this to R&D, or you guys can do it, depending on where you're based. You can send this to Hikvision, so they have a much better understanding of what the issue is and how the unit and product is performing. So it's a really good way of getting additional diagnosis information out of the product. Security, user management, network. I'm not going to go through all of these because these are pretty standard functionalities. Hike Connect, if you want to use Hike Connect, you can use that. Integration protocol, so the OnVIF, Hikvision CGI, TPC acceleration, traffic shaping, SRTP, etc. So you can set that up, as required by your application. We've already set this up as an 8 megapixel, 25 frames a second using H.265. If you want to use audio, you can actually use the audio input and output. So you can connect a powered horn to it, or a PoE horn, and then speak to the product either through Imix or through our app or software. It allows you to direct audio directly to the product, which could then broadcast a live audio and broadcast to that area. So it's really powerful. You can connect the microphone into it. Image settings. So again, all your default image settings. Now from the scene drop-down box, we've set it as street, but you can select any of these which may be applicable to your application. You can adjust the exposure rate there, focus, day-night settings, and we've left ours in permanent day mode because there is a lot of supplementary lighting around this area, but you can leave it as auto and then change the sensitivity. We can go to backlight settings, white balance, image, etc. So we can adjust these as required, and there you go, there's a car coming in. Now, what you will find is when you set this up into ANPR mode, you will find the image by nature, I think from memory, it goes to 1/250. So that's the shutter speed will adjust, so the image will start to appear dark as the daylight drops. Now, with an ANPR application, you do need to have this exposure rate or shutter rate higher to be able to capture plates at low light. The reason being, if a car approaches you with their strong headlights on, what you will find is you won't read the plate generally. So on a standard ANPR product, we generally fit this at a 1/1000. So at night, when a vehicle comes with their headlights, you do get the headlight is sort of dimmed down, and you get the reflection from the IR off the number plate, which then allows us to read that number plate in our OCR manner and then output it to our software, NVR, etc. So be mindful when you do select ANPR mode and the camera reboots, that will put the shutter speed up from 1/25, which is the traditional image exposure shutter limit, over 1/250 from memory. You can adjust this up and down. With ANPR, it's a fine balancing act, because you want to have that performance, especially at low light and at night, but you also want the product to give you a good overall image as a PTZ, because that's why I was saying earlier, if you can use an ANPR camera, then we do recommend to use a dedicated ANPR camera outside of the PTZ. An ANPR camera, the 7-line or the IDS TCM, will always give a higher performance rate than the ANPR functionality in the PTZ. But this is just to show we can do it, and there are instances where the zoom ratio on our standard static product isn't enough, and this gives you another option. But bear in mind that shutter limit will have an effect on the image, and therefore you need to be aware of that. Okay, so focus, we can put it as semi-auto, auto or manual. Day-night switch is in the day mode. Backlight settings, white balance, image enhancement, etc. So pretty much explained what they do. Very standard functionality, but please be aware when you're using it with ANPR functionality, you have to be mindful of that exposure rate. PTZ functionality. It's got the proportional pan, preset freezing, etc. By default, the maximum tilt angle will actually come as, I believe it's 0/900 degrees. So it's pretty, when you zoom in, it zooms into the floor at distance. So what I always do is log into the PTZ. First thing I do is put it to -20 elevation and click save. The PTZ then tilts up more, so when you zoom in, you get that longer focal plane to zoom into, rather than zooming into the floor. So it does allow the PTZ to tilt up. So effectively, you can zoom into the sky with a -20 elevation. But again, you can adjust that specific to your application, but it's a very handy thing, and I do always turn that on or adjust it whenever I log into a PTZ initially. The limit function, you can actually set stop. So if you have a application where you can't turn it left or right for privacy reasons, a privacy mask may not be applicable. You're simply not allowed to go past these two waypoints. You can actually set manual stop. So I can move the PTZ, click set, and save, and it puts a physical manual stop. So an electronic, not a physical, an electronic stop on the PTZ, where the PTZ is not able to turn past that, and you can set it either way. So it could be a privacy mask, just wouldn't be applicable in that scenario. You're just not allowed to turn the PTZ around to that area. So the limit stop enables that function. Initial position is when the PTZ boots up, where do you want it to go back to? So you can set that if you're required. Most people don't set it, but you can turn it to this position, click set. If the camera reboots, then it'll drive round to that set position. Park action. Now, this is you don't need park action when you're using ANPR, and the reason being is when we enable the ANPR functionality, like I have, they default to the scene. So when you release control of the PTZ, the scene settings, which we'll run through in the road traffic menu, will override the park action, and it will, after 5 seconds, go directly back to that ANPR scene based on the schedule. But you can actually enable park action on a standard functionality, adjust the time, so it could be 60 seconds of use. So when you let go of the PTZ for 60 seconds, or after 60 seconds of an alarm, or if it starts to auto track somebody, smart track somebody, it will only track them for a maximum of 60 seconds with park action enabled, because it then will drive it back to the preset 1 position, or whatever preset you choose, or pattern patrol, auto scan, tilt scan, etc. So you can choose one of those predefined actions plus the preset number, tour number, patrol number, etc. and the time that it will take to that park action to then enable initialize to come back in, okay? But for ANPR, we don't need that on. Privacy mask, you can mask areas. If you do use this with an NVR, it's important that privacy mask on a PTZ is set in the PTZ menu, not on the NVR, because that block will follow you on an NVR. So always set the privacy mask in the PTZ, and you can just move it around, enable it as required. Very simple to do. Schedule tasks, again, I can enable schedule task and put different procedures in there based on the time and day. So I could have a patrol for all day Monday, and then a pattern all day Tuesday, a preset between that time, a panoramic time between that time. So you can see where you can start building this functionality into your product at different timescales, different actions. So it's a really powerful function. And then the park time, how long, when you release control, the park time is 5 seconds by default when you use this schedule task. But again, you can put it as 60 seconds, etc. Well, you have to remember that different actions, so schedule task part-time and park action part-time, if you enable both, they can conflict. So sometimes you have to logically think about this, because you could have a conflict of the PTZ trying to park itself after 60, then 5, and then do a different action. So just be mindful of what you're actually enabling in here. And let's get rid of all that. Wiper, like I said earlier, if you use the model with a wiper, the default is one time only, so when you press the wiper button, it'll just wipe. I always set it to auto, click save, so when it detects rain on the lens through the rain sensor, it'll just wipe the wiper. Really powerful functionality. Clear config enables you to clear all the presets and start again. Sometimes we do that when it gets very confused with itself, when there's a lot of configuration being done or you need to change it. Prioritize PTZ, position settings. So you can use this with the compass effectively, set pointers north, so it gives you the azimuth is correct. When you're moving it, the azimuth information on the display would then be correct. We don't really use that in the UK. Then you've got the gyroscope attitude calibration. So this has got an electronic gyroscope functionality in these new PTZ. So I can click the calibration function, and then it will try to self-calibrate electronically to give, there we go. So that's going to give you a stable image. So this post is 8 meters high. It does vibrate in the wind. You know, it's a bit of a wind tunnel down here. So what you'll find is this auto calibration method can really help stabilize the image, especially in a situation like this where we've got it on a movable tower, for instance. And trust me, when the wind blows, this moves. Vandal-proof alarm. So you can upload and enable the vandal-proof alarm. So with the sensitivity, the vandal-proof is if somebody tries to move the PTZ. So they get up to it and they're trying to move it around, shake it off, bash it off with a hammer, etc. So it's how sensitive that alarm is and where do you want that alarm, upload the vandal-proof alarm to. So that would be sent to our software effectively with this enabled. So it's a new functionality in the new range. So again, you can enable it or not enable it, but it does give you an added tamper functionality within the product. Just turn that off. Enable vandal-proof alarm voice warning. You'd have to have a speaker connected to that audio output of the camera. They don't have a built-in speaker for it. The GPS you can set up if required. I don't use it. I don't know anybody that currently uses that in the UK, but I could be wrong. Rapid focus. This is where you can set up the rapid focus function. So if we know that this is a set point or we've got like a preset tour, we can actually calibrate the product, set the steps or the calibration points within the tour. So the PTZ, when it's moving, it will already be in focus by the time it hits that preset location. So it doesn't go to that location and have to autofocus, which can take a couple of seconds, especially if there's lots of movement in the scene. This is a way of getting the product in focus. So as you're moving it through a preset tour or manually, it will always be in focus before you get to the destination that you want it to be in. So it's a really handy function. I'll do that as a separate standout 3-4 minute video, because to add it on now is going to take a long time. As I said, motion detection, video tampering, alarm input outputs. And then you've got smart event. they're all missing because we're in ANPR mode, don't forget, but only the audio detection, so you can connect the microphone in and have the loss of detection, sudden increase or decrease in sound detection plus the sensitivity. Storage, if you're going to use it with an SD card for time-lapse or event trigger, etc., plus long-term record to the SD card, and you can just set that up there. Cloud storage is not, that's with our back-end CVS product. Road traffic. Now this is where we're going to set the ANPR functionality up. So if I want to use that, you'll see there's no live play information, so we can't actually see the real-time ANPR information. There's no whitelist or blacklist functionality within the product. Again, if you need that, you need to use the static product. But what this can do is record the number plates and output it to our NVR or our software. So if it's just for information, capturing plate information, etc., then that's absolutely fine. Our NVR and software also has the whitelist, blacklist functionality, so it could be used in conjunction with that, which could trigger the output, which could then open a gate, etc., or turn a light on, whatever that may be. But it doesn't actually have the functionality built in, which is another really important point to highlight. So 4 detection scenes, so I can set this up to be 4 different ANPR positions. So this is position 1. I could have it on 4 different entrances or roadways. I could also have it at different times. So the way this works is detection scene 1 is this, so that's my border lines, that's my trigger line, and these can be moved to suit. So anything that goes between these 2 lines and across that blue line, that's where it tries to detect a plate forward or backward. That is the calibration box, effectively. That red box is the calibration area for the camera. Arming schedule. We've got scene 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see this is currently set to 24 hours to be in scene 1, which is when you release control of the PTZ, it always goes back to scene 1, which is this scene. I could break it up, so I could say scene 1, I want between 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning. Let's do it properly. 7 in the morning and then 7 at night. And then scene 2, I want between that time there. Replicate it across to all days, yes, apart from the weekend. I'll just do it. So you can see between these times, the PTZ will move to scene 1 to scene 2 back to scene 1, and you can do that up to 4 scenes. So that's a really powerful function, especially if it's like roadways, different entrances and exits at different times, etc. Really, really powerful function. So I'm gonna let's delete that and just put it as scene 1 for the purpose of this video. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. So I'm going to turn off. You'll see why I'm going to turn it off. Just disable the functionality a minute. Now I'm going to zoom all the way out and I'm going to reposition this PTZ to be on the DVS car park entrance. Whoop, too much. Bear with me. Bit too much there. Okay, so I'm going to save that. So basically, anywhere, move this just to make sure we get it. And again, this is my borderline, so fine. Click save. So any traffic that goes over this, any direction, should now capture the number plate. So we'll give it a name and say DVS entrance. Click save. There's a total of 1 lanes, but you can do it up to 4. Direction of vehicle is downward, upward, or unknown, so it doesn't really matter, but it just adds that to it. And then you can select your country there. So we've left it as United Kingdom. Just click save on that. Enable it and click save. Arming schedule and linkage method. So you can notify surveillance and upload to FTP. Picture, again, you can adjust that as required and put all these additional details in there if you like. And then under camera, device number, I can put it as like DVS entrance. Now I can go and drive across there, which I will do with my truck now, which should capture me in and out looking at that scene. And now I've set that as a scene. Oh, I need to go back to there, sorry. Because that's preset 1. Okay, 2 seconds. Come on. I'll go and drive through this now, and then hopefully you'll see this working when the Internet Explorer lets me catch up. Okay, so let's do the lines there. One thing I didn't do was set the preset. Apologies. Whenever you're trying to do a live video, save. Down a bit. Yeah, okay. Right. I'm going to enable this. I'm going to enable this. Not, I have enabled it. I'm going to go and drive through this scene now. And then we'll review it shortly. So I'll go and drive through it, and then we'll review it rather than you watching this, because that could take a couple of minutes. I'll stop the video, and then we'll quickly go and review it. Okay, so using IMS 4200, I have driven back and forth a couple of times. If I go to search, so I'm just searching. This product is added to the this PTZ is added to a I-series recorder, and I've just added this to the standard IMS 4200. Now, if I click on one, you can see there W1 DVS. You can see there's the capture of the plate, and that's from a big distance. It is an 8 megapixel image, so you can see it's giving us DVS entrance, capture time, plate number, vehicle color is unknown, brand unknown, etc. because that stuff only actually works driving toward the camera rather than away from it anyway. But it's never going to be sold under that premise, and it's not as accurate as an IDS TCM camera for that either. So it's something that you should be highly aware of. But again, you get the plate, you get the thing. If I click on playback, allow that, you can see there, and I can export that then if I need to. Click play again, and that's me driving out of there, you know, not slowing down, you know, particularly slow, and it's captured the plate just fine. So that effectively is the ANPR function. Even though it's caught the plates there, and I searched for W1 DVS, one thing you have, like I said about the inaccuracy, this one here, it captured it as WI DVS. So you can see, whilst I can still search for it, and it's actually caught the number plate. Remember when I was saying about the accuracy may not be as good using a PTZ over a static. And again, really, realistically, I'd be zooming this in to get a bigger image. So I wouldn't be there. I'd be capturing that much more zoomed in ratio, or I'd be adjusting my trigger line. But just so you can see that, again, this does. And it's vehicle brand, the type sedan, so it has tried to pick up some extra detail in there because it's driving toward the camera. Click on playback, and again, it's not the best angle. I'm going in quite tight, you know, still at speed. It's not as good as the IDS TCM, like I said, but you get the image, you get the thing, so you can still search for it and it would still give you it. But that one was accurately recorded, and that one did sort of misread it really. But it's a good thing to point out rather than me saying how amazing it is. It's something definitely for you to be aware of. But again, the algorithm is still there, so it's still really impressive, and another functionality and function you could deploy to your site, you know, if you needed to, especially with the timing element where it can go and do that at night and then go back to being a PTZ on tours in the daytime, for instance. So again, really, really powerful. Okay, I think for me, that's all I wanted to show you on the ANPR functionality. I'm going to go and put it into Smart Event now, and we can do a separate video on smart tracking. So enjoy your day. Hope you learned something valuable from this. Join us for part 2, where we can show you the smart tracking and the smart VC8 functionality setup. Stay safe.